Hi, Cordelia. My name is Fiona, and I'm one of the information and support workers at Mummy Star.
Yes.
The second question that we wanted to put to you is often at the end of active treatment, our mums express that they have feelings that can be more intense, as everyone assumes that there'll be a huge sigh of relief and their happiness will come back and they'll be back to their old selves and moving on with their life. How can we help take this pressure off our families and also help others better understand the multiple aspects of this?
Yes, I mean, I've gone off at tangents in the first bit, haven't I? Because there are crossovers there. It's not psychologically realistic, Fiona, whoever asked that question. I mean, to be over a huge trauma and, you know, be relieved. Well, any of us who've gone through the initial stages of cancer treatment or, you know, living with a still present cancer, know that it doesn't just end like that anyway. I mean, I don't know many people for whom cancer has just ended like that, you know. The treatments endure, you're in numb shock initially anyway. I mean, that's just a normal human response to get yourself through the awfulness, and the treatments are still barbaric. I mean, you know, that it's an extreme word, but they are, aren't they? I mean, they're horrible. The treatments are horrible, most of them. People react differently to them. Some people react more extremely than others, but they are. So it's not psychologically realistic. Anybody who says to you, you should be over it by now, or, you know, why are you still suffering? I mean, I remember this myself. I remember being invited by a family member to a Christmas celebration, like about 3 minutes after my last radiotherapy, and they wanted me to be over it because they didn't want to have to face it anymore. They wanted me to be better, and I just remember feeling so washed out, like I'd been, I can't remember quite how, I just felt so washed out, absolutely traumatized out of my brain to the extent I could barely talk. And yeah, it's and so I hadn't even processed it at that point. But now, I mean, again, it may not be psychologically realistic for anybody to say the kind of things that maybe it's helpful to say, but there's no reason why you shouldn't say to somebody, but that's just, you know, you can think and say and feel what you like, but actually the reality is, why wouldn't I be struggling massively at this point? And the reasons why people react the way they do they're multifaceted. That's why I wrote the long-term effects of cancer, you know, because there are so many elements to it. But it's resistance within people themselves. It's they're taught to believe that, I mean, all the conventional wisdom still about cancer is that people actually really don't know, for the most part, what a complex process it is. Do they just don't know, and so they tend to think, why aren't you over it? But actually, I think people also have a thing about, well, such a person died of cancer, so, you know, you're one of the lucky ones. Why should, you know, just get on with your life now? They're not able to take account of and don't understand what a draining experience it is. Hugely draining. I mean, there aren't enough words to describe how draining it is, how exhausting it is, both psychologically and physically. So yeah, it's there's a tension there, huge tension, but it's finding the courage within yourself, really, to say, hang on, hold on, I have a right, I'm allowed to say how I feel and feel justified doing it. And, you know, it's not easy. I really struggle to get to that point, I have to say.
And do you think, Cordelia, you mentioned there about, you know, being invited somewhere, that often family, friends, you know, at the end of treatment want you to be okay, they want you to be back to normal because they struggle how to deal with everything as well?
Absolutely. But that's classic, isn't it? I mean, that's it, Tracy, isn't it? In life in general, whether it's somebody close has died. I mean, I'm going through it myself because my partner has Alzheimer's and is in residential care. And, you know, I basically, there's practically no one, you know, in my life who much as, yeah, I mean, it's a really tricky one. They don't, if something makes people feel uncomfortable, you know, or it ruffles their feathers in any way, then a lot of people walk away from that, don't they? They put their own comfort first. It's a rare person who can actually, so in a way, those of us who are struggling, there's something about doing a reality check and going, maybe the reality is I can't really ask as much of that person as I might like to ask because they're just not capable. And that, in a way, that's a support, you know, a way of supporting ourselves. It's not very helpful. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I'm wanting to go ahead and talk about something that, I mean, there obviously is a need for more support around all this. There's not enough. I mean, you're doing a wonderful job at Mummy Stars, and there are organisations out there, but beyond the initial phases, I'm not sure that there is a lot really.
And I think, sorry, I think, you know, there's two things around, like you say, certainly after the initial or the primary treatment finishes, that there's the fact that people don't understand. So because we've not explained exactly what we're going through, because sometimes that's difficult ourselves. And there's the fact that people want you to be okay because that's easier for them. So I think we're in that mix of, you know, somebody going through that diagnosis and treatment isn't fully able to explain exactly how it's affected them. And then on the other side, that actually people want them to be okay because that's what they want. It's the person they love and they want to know, they want to think that they're now okay. So I think it is, right, you know, a difficult kind of, yeah, for the person that's going through that treatment and that diagnosis, a difficult one.
It's hard when it's all on us and we're feeling so stressed and so exhausted and all the rest of it. And then the onus is on us to explain. One of the things that when I wrote this second book that I wrote, I don't know if you can see that, Emotional Support Through Breast Cancer, it's a tiny little book. And I wrote it a few years ago now, but there's still a lot that's relevant in there. And it was a response to, you know, all the myths really about how you should be and all the rest of it. But there's a little exercise in there, which I know people do. If you can manage it, it's helpful because you're right. I mean, some people just don't want to know and there's no way they're going to. Other people just genuinely don't understand and they want to understand better. And unfortunately, at this point in time, I mean, there might be those of you out there who listening to this who know better than I do, if there are places you can go for realistic information, but that's the problem, it's usually sanitized. But this little exercise is one where you sit down with whoever it is who genuinely does want to know, and you just spend a couple of minutes speaking without being interrupted, telling the other person you have to be really strict about it. So you can't interrupt the other person, they can't interrupt you. It's in this book, it's in this little manual thing here, this little handbook thing, and it's just one where we so often interrupting one another and not listening. It's the not listening really, and when things are highly charged, we don't listen anyway, do we? So there are strategies that you can employ if there's somebody in your life you really want, like your partner, whether you really want him or her to listen and they're not listening, you know, and vice versa probably.